Hi, I'm Billy Keels, the host of the Going Long podcast. Every week, I'm going to be here interviewing the absolute best in the business as it relates to real asset investing, as well as real Main Street investors. We're going to be having conversations where you can listen in, and that's going to help you to continue on your path to education so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident in investing long distance. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you're liking it as well, because that way you can get every single episode as soon as it comes out. And by the way, don't forget to leave today's episode a 5-star review. Let's go ahead and listen to today's conversation. Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels. And you know, if you've ever wanted to understand how to go about building and operating mobile home communities across multiple states or multiple geographies, you definitely need to stick around for this entire conversation because you're going to love it. Because today's guest not only is a third generation community owner and operator, he is actually focused on operations of over 5,000 sites and mobile community sites in 5 different states across the United States with assets well over $75 million. And he's the founding member of American Dream Communities, also Mobile Home Park Advisors, and Mobile Home Community Leads, Skyler Liechty. Skyler, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Billy. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
Oh man, this has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed speaking to you just before the program, and I'm sure that you're going to add massive amounts of value to everybody that is listening today. So listen, Skyler, I think we talked about it before, but one of the ways that we like to start out the show is really help people understand, where are you based in the United States?
Sure. So we're based in Dallas, Texas. Texas, for your listeners who aren't familiar with the U.S., is one of the southern states. Our state actually borders Mexico. Dallas is kind of the north central part of Texas. In Texas, you got a couple of major metros, and Dallas-Fort Worth is one of the biggest ones in the state.
Okay, fantastic. And I was there a couple of times last year. I used to live in Houston many moons ago. But we'll talk about that one afterwards. And Skyler, what's the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
So the most positive thing that's happened to me, it's not business related, but yesterday, Sunday, I got to have a nice dinner outside. The climate was reasonable here with my family. So that was a really special time.
You know, and I appreciate you sharing that, because so many times, Skyler, it's really about what are the moments in life and being able to spend time with your family and your loved ones. It's one of those things that it's great when we can cherish those moments. So thanks for sharing that with us. Listen, I gave a couple of highlights of some of the things that you have done as a third generation in this area, in this business. I know there's a lot more that you could tell us, but if you could just help give us an idea more about who is Skyler Liechty and some of the things that you've done and decisions that you made to get to this point in your backstory. Sure.
So, like I'm sure a lot of people, you know, after high school, you start looking at college. You know, what am I going to do with my life? Type of discussion. So, for me, I was always really interested in numbers and financing and accounting, things of that nature. So, that was kind of the trajectory I took, and just started looking at real estate investment in general. And being that I have a family history in manufactured housing, it made sense to kind of, play in the area that you have some experts around you, so to speak. So predominantly what I did is deal sourcing, operations management, so the full cycle and the debt placement. So I got to see from the full cycle, from finding the deal, financing the deal, running the deal, and then exiting the deal, which I think is really helpful for someone to see that full cycle. So you understand, if you're going to exit a deal, what type of financing you need, what debt works well with your strategy. So.
Wow, that's awesome. So being able to have, this love for numbers, finance, also
Hmm.
being able to be surrounded already by experts, it was one of the things that you wanted to continue to move into that area, and since then have been able to go full circle, really understanding the full life cycle of the manufactured home space, which I think is
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic. So, and I know that you have a particular fondness for the operational efficiencies, right? And maybe we could
Right.
talk a little bit about that, because one of the things we love here on the Going Long podcast is really helping people to feel more comfortable and confident investing beyond their backyards, right? And so maybe,
Right.
Skyler, you can talk to us about how important is that role of operational efficiencies and process to be able to go across. I mean, we talked about 5 different states. If you allow me to say them, like I know it's Texas and
Yeah.
Missouri, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Kansas. Like
Yeah.
that's awesome. So talk to us a little bit about the
Yeah.
importance of operational efficiencies.
Sure. Sure. And actually, one of the states I forgot is in December of 2019, we bought a community in Florida.
Oh, okay.
So,
Awesome.
that's kind of also southern east side of the United States. So I think operationally, the biggest thing that we have learned, or that I've learned, is geographically, it doesn't matter how far you are from the asset, right? You can be in your backyard, or it can be, a 4-hour plane ride that you got to connect through two different cities. The big thing is, when you have the asset, for us, is standardizing the processes. So whether that's a policy manual, whether that is task management tools, but putting in those processes that allow you to replicate the success. So unfortunately, a lot of our policies are built around, hey, this hurt when we did it this way. How do we not do it that way again? So because of that, we feel that we've been able to geographically go wherever, buy a community, and successfully operate it, because we've built in those policies. And I think that's a real key to investing. If you can't touch and feel your asset every day or once a week, is to have those things in place.
And so love being able to, talking about having those things in place, like the different procedures, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can give us an example of one that, when you're talking to someone that is interested in understanding more about what you're actually doing at American Dream Communities, it's something that, okay, this process, this actually makes sense. This is, okay, now I get it.
Yeah. So I think, and this is super basic in my judgment, but one of our policies, as far as like an on-site management policy, is we ask our property managers to walk their community every day. It sounds very simple, but one of the things that's very interesting about manufactured housing is most of the residents own their homes, and they're renting the lot from us. So it's a ground lease, essentially. So because of that, you have people who maybe their homes need some work on it. Maybe they have rule violations, whatever those are. So we found that in general, if we can get our manager in the community every day, people can stop and talk to them. They can build that sense of community, and they can also check, like, hey, Mr. Jones, you need to, pick up your toy in the yard, whatever the case may be. So again, that's very simple. We view it as very simple, but as we talk to other community owners, it's not something that everyone does.
And so a lot of times it is really about being able to keep things as simple as possible, right? And knowing within your community that you're actively participating in the community, that you're present, that you're visible, and that you're also saying, hey, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, this thing shouldn't really be where it is. We want to make sure that we're maintaining the community in the community standards. So I love that. So, there's this question, and I know it's come up, and as we're getting started here on the Going Long podcast, you're really helping people to understand. So more about the specifics of a manufactured home community. And there's this question, you mentioned something earlier, and maybe you could go talk about it a little bit more. It's about the owning the actual pad versus owning the pad plus the manufactured home. Maybe if you could talk to us from your perspective, and also maybe what are some of the advantages of doing it one way versus the other?
Sure. So I think the reality is most manufactured home communities that are purchased have a component of what we would call community-owned homes or park-owned homes. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, you had debt options for people in homes. So they could buy a home, they could get financed, the homeowner. So the community owner, it was great. They had a couple of vacant home sites. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones are going to go up to the local retailer. There's debt for them, and their community's filled up. After that market more or less blew apart, park owners started to have to provide a bridge for people, right? So typically in our communities, we're going to be anywhere from 70% park owned, or 70% resident owned, 30% park owned. That's kind of a typical mix for us. It's really, from our point of view, the only way you keep your community full is you have to plan on buying new homes. So from an operational standpoint, I think you then look at the decision of what are we going to do with these homes? Are we going to try and sell them for cash? Are we going to try and rent them? Are we going to try and do some type of a lease and maybe give them an option to purchase it down the road? And all of those have their operational challenges, if you will. So I think that generally speaking, if you're looking to buy an asset with a value add component, the value add is typically going out, buying new homes, filling up the asset that way. And, realistically, one of the side benefits of that, which most people don't think through, is when you drive into a community, if it's all 1980s and 1990s home, the community looks a little bit tired. Not a bad community, but you go in with some of those vacancies and pop in some brand new homes, and it completely changes the look. I mean, it's like a shot of lifeblood into that community.
And so when you give it that shot of lifeblood, right? Are you then attracting new residents that want to bring their manufactured home, that they want to purchase their manufactured home, or more people that they like what they've seen and they just want to be able to rent the land as well as a manufactured home?
So some of it, right? Some of it, we see that as we clean up a community, as we bring in new homes, we do see interest from people. Maybe they're at another community that's not doing it. They're like, you know what, the community's kind of going the wrong way. I'd rather be part of a community that's going the right way. And I think that's one of the challenges for people getting into this industry is if they don't understand that component, if they are just analyzing, here's what the NOI is, here's what type of a return I need to get. If they're not seeing from the point of view of how do we bring it up to where it's going to be successful long term, even if we don't hold it long term, you got to have that plan of how to do it. And I'll tell you, it's a lot less painful if you know that on the front end than if you get into it and you're like, oh, now what do we do?
Is it Stephen Covey that says start with the end in mind? So I guess it's always a nice thing when you actually understand what do you plan on doing at exit before you get in. And so, Skyler, and this is what gives you a very unique expertise, right? Because not only, and one of the things maybe I didn't mention in the very beginning is that you have overseen numerous types of both value add as well as turnaround and handling stabilized parks. So you're really able to look at no matter what opportunity and say, okay, this is where we can play. This is where we can add more value for our community and eventually for our investors. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. I think that in today's market, I'll tell you that finding stabilized communities at that provide a return is very challenging. I think that for the U.S., our commercial debt dollars are very cheap. So you have capitalization rates or cap rates that have really compressed, especially in manufactured housing. Yeah. In a post-COVID world, we look at our collections and they've, I think industry average is about 95%. That's good if you're already in the space or trying to get into the space. Everyone's trying to get into the space. So when you're looking at kind of a cash flow yield play, you typically have to focus on those value add components. So value add can be anything in our book from, we bought a community in a good secondary market. It was 30% occupied. We went in, we filled the other, 2/3 of it. brand new homes, put about $300,000 into the infrastructure. So we built it back to where it should have been, So from that point of view, those are the deals that we're seeing right now, where you can make a return, a pretty good yield on them.
Okay, so really looking for more of the turnaround, like where you're 30% occupied, or the value add versus the stabilized, and that makes a lot of sense. You know what? And maybe people are thinking to themselves, well, why in the world would Skyler and his team go in if there's only 30% of the park occupied? But maybe you could help people understand a bit more about that, because are you actually buying the new the new manufactured homes yourself?
Yes.
Are you renting them to others with, you mentioned before, like a lease to own option, this kind of thing? Maybe talk us through that, because I think that's a really interesting model when you're looking at turning a park around.
Yep. So I'll try and make it as straightforward as possible, right? So generally speaking, you can, whatever market you're going to be in, whether it's Dallas, whether it's Houston, Tulsa, I mean, wherever you're looking at, you can go into that market with a little bit of diligence and determine, hey, when this deal is full, when rents are where they should be, when expenses are where they should be, you can make a judgment of how much or what the value on a per lot basis is. So, for example, in the market that we just bought, this community is a smaller community, right? It was 60 home sites. Okay. 20 were occupied. So we bought 40 brand new homes, moved them in. We've done some people who bought them for cash. We've done some people who did the lease option. I think we have one or two people that decided they wanted to rent. So when we look at that asset, it looked like a bomb had exploded in the community. It was something that most real estate investors would drive by and say, nope, no. So we went in, we bought it. We put in about $300,000 of infrastructure work. So this is something that in manufactured housing, typically in the community, you're going to own all of the streets, all of the off-street parking, all of the water lines, all of the wastewater lines. Typically, you don't own the electric lines, but those are typically the things that you own and you maintain. So if a community owner doesn't keep their rents in line with market, if they don't control their expenses, then the first thing they do, some owners decide, hey, we're not going to cut what we make, we're just going to cut the maintenance of it. So then over time, you have a deteriorated asset. So the reason we bought this specific asset is on a per lot valuation, we paid about $14,000 per lot with our all-in cost. That market today, which we're buying another community in the market, is assessing communities at about $60,000 per home site. So our delta was 15 to 60, right? Wow. So just easy numbers, that's a $45,000 delta per home site times 60. Now, let's say that we go out, we buy a brand new home, we put it in the lot. Easy numbers. Let's say it's $40,000, which our costs are a little bit higher, but we put it in for $40,000. So we could give the home away and still make $5,000 per home site. And so from our point of view, that's why it's like, you're kind of setting yourself up where even if everything you put in, you gave it away, you still would be ahead.
Yeah, that's powerful. And so for those of you that are listening to us, great. But I think if you you jump over to one of our video channels, you should actually watch the explanation again, because what Skyler just shared with us in that particular example is something that should be studied over and over and over, right? And so thanks for sharing that, Skyler. And actually, I do one question. When you talked about the all-in cost being around 13 or 14,000, would that be on the pad, or are you talking about the pad plus the other infrastructure that you were talking about?
Plus that's it. So on a cost basis, just the acquisition cost is about 10,000 per home site, but the additional is that infrastructure work. Gotcha. Because if the community looked the right way, you would have to pay more per lot in our assessment. So,
okay. And I think that is, and I know that's one of the things that's really important is all of that infrastructure. When you think about having the really nice paved roads, the highly lit, the streets, and you can actually see every corner of the park, and then you have all of the different utility infrastructure, something that really helps to set one community apart from another. Right. And
absolutely. So it's the same thing if you're in the office building space, if you're in apartment, if you're in the strip shopping, whatever it is, there's different grades of asset. Manufactured housing is the exact same way. You have an A grade community, which the community we bought in Florida is an A grade, 55 plus, restricted, their own lake there, the dock. I mean, the whole deal. It's picture perfect, right? All the way to, call it an F grade community, which I didn't realize there was an F grade community until a couple of weeks ago. An owner said, "Hey, I'm buying an F grade community." I didn't even know it went that far, but okay.
Did you get videos or pictures of that community?
So essentially that means probably similar to where we started on this project I was explaining. The streets were all busted up. You couldn't drive the streets without, jacking up your alignment. Most of the homes, you look and you say, surely no one's living in that home. Okay. That type of community, I think, is what they would call. But again, you can take that, you bring it up to maybe a B grade community, solid asset.
Okay. And when you're creating, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, this is one of the areas where you are going out to be able to create value for the community, for your investors, and for your brand. And so, and these are fixes that can happen relatively quickly with the right amount of capital behind and the right vision. Right. And so I think we'll maybe on our another conversation we can go into some of the different aspects of, because I know you love the numbers and we can talk about some of the things that you can happen, like around cost segregation studies that can actually help you, your community, as well as your investors. So, but we'll save that one. We'll save that one for another. Okay. But Skyler, you talked about due diligence. So I'm just going to imagine that I'm somebody, I want to start hearing a little bit more about mobile home parks and mobile home communities. I'm listening to what Skyler's talking about. There sounds really, really interesting. You can create nice communities, people that are there, people that care. You're able to create returns. There's some numbers that look really, really well, but I just really don't know enough about this. Like, if I were from a due diligence standpoint, what are some of the things that I should be thinking about to really make sure that, hey, listen, you know what? I think, this is an area that I really want to learn more about. I want to get more educated on, because it seems to really resonate with me.
Yeah. So I think I would encourage anyone to not start on the deal, right? But kind of target the markets you want to go into, right? Because there are great markets in the US. There are markets that you look at and you're like, I don't think I want to be in that market. So from our point of view, we've narrowed down the markets that we're actively looking and buying at. I think that's critical. Just because a deal looks good on paper, if you're not familiar with the market, or if you get into a small market or things of that nature, it can be very, very challenging. Especially, for us, it's that prism of what is the exit, right? And if you're the big dog in the market, that's a harder exit than if you own a couple of communities and you have the ELSs of the world, multi-billion-dollar companies that can take you out whenever. So I think look at the market, see if there's any major players there, and once you get comfortable with the market, then I think you dig into the specifics of the community, right? So again, this is where we start is, hey, is it on the right side of town, right? The optimum is to be in a community that is surrounded by very expensive traditional built homes. Those communities typically stay full. So things like that. Then when you get to the actual, to your point, the due diligence on site type of stuff, your biggest things are this: what do the roads look like? Because if they're messed up, I'm going to have to fix them. Are there in your due diligence, are there major utility repairs that you're going to have to deal with? Things like that. And then just a physical inspection, do the homes look right? Are there any community standards? If there aren't, and you come in and you enforce community standards post-closing, you have to plan on some of those homes either moving out, being abandoned on site, which is a whole nother thing. But that's part of this. You can't just look at the numbers from our point of view.
Okay. So, not just looking at the numbers. And I really love the way that you talked about that, right? Because due diligence, it really starts even before the specific opportunity. And one of the things we like to talk about here a lot is very in line with what you're talking about, Skyler, which is, number one, know what you want to be able to do in a marketplace from a personal perspective. Meaning, are you looking for something that creates cash flow? Are you looking for something that creates appreciation over time? And then from there, very much is looking at the location. What you're talking about is what what is the market, and then being able to understand really strong teams like the team that you're leading can really help to give you more insight, not only into the marketplace, but then also eventually into the specific opportunity, right? And so I think you're giving us great advice, and sharing your knowledge, I guess is probably the best way to say it, and really think about it before you get to the specific opportunity. Kind of take 2 steps up and look at the team and look at the specific market. So love that. And I do want to ask you just one last question before we kind of get ready to get into what we call the going long final 3. And it comes back to this question of, you started in Texas, and you've since then, with the very strong processes that you have in place, there was a certain point that you said, you know what? Why don't we go beyond our backyard? Why don't we look at other places? Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about that, because at the end of the day, here at the Going Long podcast, is one of the things that we want to help people do is feel more comfortable and confident going beyond your backyard. And obviously you have done that. You have a company that does that and continues to do that. So maybe talk to us a little bit about why you've decided to do that.
So I think it's just opportunity driven, right? If you're in, for example, our market, Dallas Fort Worth, there's a good handful of manufactured home communities. A lot of large institutional public companies own them. So you get to a point where, there's opportunities, but you're relying totally on the capital appreciation aspect of it, no cash flow. So for us, we just sat down. We said, hey, we think we have a pretty good process here, and let's see what it looks like if we go into another state or another market. It certainly had its challenges, right? And because of that, we were able to develop those processes a lot better. We were able to dial them in. I would say that was our biggest challenges. We kind of thought we had it dialed in, and then we jumped into other states and we realized, well, we kind of had it dialed in, but it was not where it needed to be. So now we're there, and now, going to, for example, from Dallas to Florida, no big deal. We were looking at some deals in Kentucky again, no big deal. So I think it's just, once you do it that first time, get over the initial tension or concern, it gets a lot easier from there.
Okay. So I think that's great. And I know you talked about it right in the very beginning. You talked about this specific geography really shouldn't be something that constrains you. And now we're kind of wrapping things up, talking about exactly what you've done. And I think that's great, because it's also about, as you move to a new geography, the questions that you need to get answers to, or the processes that you have to refine. And as you talked about, you're not starting at zero. You go into a new place, and it's 80% is already kind of is baked there. And then you have to realize that maybe, we can do this in this particular market in Texas, but when we take this same model to this specific area of Kentucky or Kansas, we just need to adapt it a little bit, because maybe the laws are a little bit different, or what the residents are able to do or not do are a little bit different, but you're not starting from scratch.
Correct. That's fair.
Okay. Wow. This is Skyler, man. I want to keep talking to you forever, man. I just want to keep on talking to you, because you're giving us so much great knowledge and sharing your expertise, which I think is phenomenal. Unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, depending on how you're looking at it, we have to get ready and wrap things up, and really love to be able to ask everyone the same kind of 3 final questions. I like to call them the going long final 3. And the thing is, Skyler, I only ask you the going long final 3 if you tell me that you're ready for me to ask you. So are you ready?
Ready.
I knew you would be. Cool. So one of the things that, Skyler, me living here in Spain, living in Barcelona, and being able to continue to connect people with US-based real assets, and now we're going to kind of bring it back this way. So help us understand, what is your favorite European city, either that you have visited or still on your bucket list?
So I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, me and my family were fortunate enough to go to Paris. And so I would say we all loved Paris. Everything about it, between the food, the museums, the history, it was wonderful. So I would say that right now is certainly our favorite. Okay,
perfect. So when we finish this conversation, I'm going to tell you I started in Paris 19 years ago here in Europe. So yeah, it was awesome. So love that. Okay. We got another vote for Paris. So awesome. And then Skyler, listen, this is kind of a tough one to ask, right? But successful people like yourself, you get to a level of success, and you talked about some things earlier, probably because you've made only one mistake along the way. All right. Well, I'm being a little facetious there. A couple, right? So help us understand, like, if you can think about one mistake that you've made, but more importantly than the mistake, what one lesson did you take away and is really helping you to continue to add more value today? What would that one lesson be?
So I'll tell you, that's an easy one for me. The biggest mistake that we made was our very first deal we syndicated out. And we kind of had the wrong structure. We had the wrong legal team behind us in the structuring. So because of that, it cost everybody involved money. Since that, we totally revamped the structure. We got the right legal team, and that's the only deal to date that we have lost money on. So the biggest takeaway was make sure your structure is right. Make sure you got the top of the line professionals behind you.
Okay. Awesome. So making sure that you have the right team on board with you, right structures in place. So fantastic. Yep. Thank you for that as well. And then the last question, Skyler, is really around what book would you recommend?
So that's a tough one. I'll say the book that I'm reading now, which I would recommend, it's a book called Release Your Brakes by James Newman. And it really does a deep dive into kind of our self-limiting beliefs and kind of overcoming those. And I think, it's probably a pretty good tie-in with what we've been talking about as far as European investors investing in real assets in the US is there's got to be some limiting beliefs there. I can't go that far away. So, for me personally, it's been a really good book and really helpful. So.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that goodness. So Release the Brakes. We'll make sure that we also include that in the show notes. So, wow, Skyler, this has been awesome from the very beginning. Your love of numbers, really wanting to having the opportunity to be surrounded by other experts. You've been able to, right from the very beginning, like geography really doesn't matter. And then understanding that you have that really strong focus on operational excellence and being able to, as a result, being able to go well beyond your backyard, helping your company, your organization to continue to grow. And even giving us some really clear examples on how you were able to turn a park around that was only 30% full, and being able to drive all of those efficiencies and different processes to make your mobile home park community one of the best. So, wow. I wanted, like I said, I want to just keep on talking to you. I'm sure that there are so many people that are watching us, that are listening to us, that were like, I need to get in touch with Skyler. What's the best way to find out more about you? What's the best way to find out more about American Dream Communities? Help us out, Skyler. What's the best way to contact you, man?
So we have a website, AmericanDreamCommunities.com. My email is simply Skyler, Skyler, at AmericanDreamCommunities.com.
All right. Awesome. So we will make sure that we include AmericanDreamCommunities.com and Skyler at AmericanDreamCommunities.com in the show notes, so we can reach out to you and contact you, know more about you and your organization. Skyler, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, man, for taking the time to share with me, and as well as the entire Going Long audience. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Billy. I really appreciate it.
Okay, this has been awesome. And so listen, once again, for those of you that are watching and listening, Skyler's added so much value today. He shared so much goodness. We'd love for you to, at least share this episode with 2 or 3 other people, because I know that there are people that are out there that can also benefit from his expertise. And you know what? We would love to know what you loved about today's episode, what you would have liked to hear. So feel free to go ahead and leave us a review. We would really love a 5-star review. Most importantly, we want to get your feedback because that's going to be very, very helpful to us. And until the very next episode, I want to wish you a wonderful day and go out and make it a great day. Thanks, everybody. Wow. Don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? When I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me like a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.